Hello, everybody. Haven't we had fun today? Thank you so much to Penny for that talk. We'll come to that in a minute. By the way, she has actually said if anybody wants to contact you, you can do, and that is at changeahead.biz. Now, we have agreed that if I introduced all these lovely ladies with their bios, we'd run out of time for the panel. So I'm just going to say hello, Alina.
Hello, Fiona.
Hi. Hello, John D.
Hello, Fiona.
Oh, that voice, wonderful. Hello, Karin. Oh, she's just waving there.
Yeah, why? Well, we don't have this much time.
Oh, okay. I'll move on. And hello, Loretta.
Hello, everyone.
And the experience that we have with these panelists is phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. But we're going to move straight in. And I'm just going to say, Karin, I know that you've had some experience of Meta Health. Would you just give us a quick run through of Penny's presentation there?
You know what I really like about Penny's presentation is she's very succinct. I learned, well, it's exporting from German New Medicine, then it was Meta Medicine, and then it was Meta Health. So I've been using it for about almost 10 years now, and it's like Penny said, it's very integral into your practice. You can't not use it once you have it. And the coolest thing is that it's a diagnostic tool. It's something that all you can do, you can pinpoint where to go. And we in EFT, and like Gary said, specific questions, getting, be an investigative person and trying to get to it. With Meta Health, you can just go, there it is. Right there, has to do with your mother when you were 12 years old, and it has to do with you're not fitting in with whatever. And once you learn Meta Health, that you just can't not use it, and that's what I love so much about it.
That is true. I do think we say analytical tool now, though, because especially in the States,
we don't diagnose. I know we don't diagnose.
We say analytical, but yes, it's a very good point. Once you, even just doing the background into it, once you know it, you can't not use it. And that was a fabulous tool, wasn't it?
And she also said, it takes away the fear. And I think that's extremely important, because when you're sick or you have an illness or a disease, especially if you have some kind of diagnosis, and you're searching for what the heck, and as she talked about, Louise Hay and Messages from the Body, which is Dr. Michael Lincoln, these people who are doing these kinds of, this means this, this disease or this illness or this pain means this. When you get to something like Meta Health, and you can say it's because of this, let's go use EFT to clear the trauma that ended up causing the disease. And it takes a while to get your head wrapped around it, because, like she said, why do I get emphysema or something and she doesn't, or why she gets it and I don't? There's a weakness in the body based on our traumatic past, which we go into, Bruce Lipton and everything we've been talking about today. So there's a reason, but with Meta Health, it's just sort of like a clear map, is what I call it. It's a real clear map to help us do our jobs.
Yeah, it is. And when you combine that knowledge with the effective use of questions, you've cut your time straight down, haven't you? And you can begin working on the specific event, what you need to work on, which is how you get the results.
And that's what's funny, because people kid me that I just want to get to work. Let's get it done. Let's find it. Let's clear it. Let's do this. And that's what I do. And then Meta Health helps me do that, as well as questions. But Meta Health really helps me go, here's where it is. Let's start here.
Brilliant. Okay, well, I'm sure we're going to return to that, but we have got a question for the panel. And I think, Loretta, if I may direct this one at you, maybe it will help if I read it out. Specifically for anyone, this is from Jane Unsworth, the lovely Jane Unsworth, and she has said, specifically for anyone there who wears a traditional hat along with the EFT and matrix tools. Having a non-counselling background, I've only recently come round to recognising a place for traditional counselling alongside energy work, and Anne touched on it earlier. Can panellists who use all three say a little about how they integrate them into their clients' sessions? Thanks all. Loretta.
Yeah, happy to field that one. I was a practicing psychotherapist for 20 years before I ever came across energy psychotherapy. I trained with Roger January '96, and I'd been a therapist for over 20 years at that point. And so for me, it was blending the work together because of a variety of reasons. One, at that time, I was working full-time in a large health organization, hospital-based, and they were very traditional, and being able to bring in the work was kind of difficult. And also my private practice, which was small until a few years ago when I started doing it full-time, people were coming to me for classic therapy, and being able to introduce it to them. It was a learning process, because indeed some people come for different things. Some come to have witness bared for what they have lived in their life, and they need that expression of what has happened to them. And introducing EFT or any of the other models that I've been trained in would thwart that process. Often they were ready for it beyond a certain point, but initially they needed to talk in a safe place. So I've learned to weave the tools, these incredible tools that I've been given over the years, into my practice. And so I don't do energy psychotherapy with everyone who comes in. And I've had people come in where I've offered these tools to them at what I felt was the appropriate moment, who said, "No, Loretta, I don't want to do that. What I need is." And I honor that until they feel, and sometimes I might push it when I really feel we can get over a hump. But then again, I give them the respect of being a co-therapist with me, and we work our way gently through that. And the other piece there that I want to say is that knowing your scope of competency is so important. If you are not trained in psychology, you really need, and I think Ann Adams referred to this earlier in her work, and I don't think anyone on this panel would disagree with me, you need competent people in your community that you feel you can safely and with trust refer people to for work that is outside your sphere. And there are people who have come into my office who want work that I am ostensibly competent to do, but the reality is that they need more support that I'm able to give them in a single person office. And so they need to be referred out, even though I've had training to do certain things. That doesn't mean I'm in the right setting to provide it. So there are a lot of questions that have to be answered before you can take someone who in your gut requires more than you can stretch even to give. And you need to be, at that point also, I turn to my colleagues when I have a question. I call somebody and go, I need to track this with somebody. And so being able to be part of a community where you can talk about your work is also vital. And that's something we tend to have a bit more in the psychotherapy world that I was trained in. And what we're seeing now is more mentoring programs popping up here and there, which I think is fabulous for the non-psychologically trained person. That come close to answering it?
That was lovely, Loretta. I mean, we'll move on to perhaps Karen in a moment, but I mean, Karen and I have had these discussions because we did do a filming day, didn't we, in Nashville last year, and we were saying about, marrying the two things together, working alongside, what we can each learn from each other, and I think it's very important. So, Karen, remind me to get you to give us those details later on, because
we called it an ethics video because it really is about you don't like Ann says, you don't know what you don't know. Mm-hmm. And just being aware is half the battle, because once you realize what you don't know, then you can do something about it.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. Okay. Well,
I would just throw in there that I'm not licensed, and so I knew that I wanted to specialize in my private practice in sex and intimacy. And I knew that I would step on some major, major landmines. So I did really early on seek the support of licensed therapists in my community. And I have a great deal of respect for the work that they do. And it's great to be able to refer when somebody's calling me from around Hermosa Beach, California. I will send people without a doubt to go see Loretta. I think it's really important, and it shows that we're growing up as a profession when we can actually see our limitations, right?
And I want to add, and respect people outside of our disciplines.
Yes.
And that's one of the things that I think I'm seeing also. There are so many paths up this mountain, and to respect all the paths, because every path doesn't work for every person, just like it doesn't work for every practitioner. And so, you know, the respectful attitude that I feel so intensely these days compared to 20 plus years ago is a wonderful thing to experience.
Isn't it just? And I think I was talking to Anne Adams when we were sort of preparing for this, and what did she say to me? And I was saying, Anne, you know so much, and she was saying, there's so much to learn. And I love that somebody who knows so much is still open to learning. And I think that's the biggest thing, that we're always looking to somebody else knows more than I do, or, you know, sort of this person can help, and it's learning, isn't it? And as you say, I love the word being respectful. Being respectful. Wonderful. Anyway, I think we have another question, so if I can share that. This is from a lady called Barbara Ann. Now, I'd like to know why at times it seems like I have a big breakthrough emotionally, but then things go back to the way they were. Now, apparently this lady is stopping herself from writing, which is something she loves, and she thought she'd had a breakthrough, but she's still not doing it. Alina, can I throw that one at you, please?
So the question is, why does it seem that things are going back? And I would say that, well, we know from, I mean, the whole theme today has been about being specific. And we know a couple of things. One is that it's infinitely more powerful to have someone guiding you through the process. So if you, Barbara Ann, if you've only been doing this work on yourself, then I would really encourage you to find someone to work with. There are things that we prevent ourselves from seeing, and I've worked with Karen just on things that I can't figure out myself. There's just no way. I have blinders on when it comes to that particular topic. And the other thing is that, you know, don't give up hope. We see a lot of one-minute wonders out there. They're touted about as this is the norm, when we all know as practitioners that some things really take persistence and perseverance and take longer than you would think. So if you are getting to specifics, and that's actually the first question I ask anyone when they tell me I've been working on this for years and years and years, my first question to them is, tell me the statements that you're tapping on. And it's a bit disheartening because I think 9 times out of 10, most people will say that they've just tried either a video or a tapping script, or were part of an event where they did these global tapping things, and they don't work. By and large, they don't work. And so if you are getting to specifics, Barbara Ann, and you still are not finding what this is about, then I encourage you to persevere, continue at it, look for the aspects, and go get help from someone else to guide you through the process.
Most definitely. We all always, I think, need to work with other people, because if Barbara Ann is still getting the problem, then there's something she hasn't got to yet. And as you said, you use the word blinders, where you say blinkers, whatever. It's because we can't see our own stuff sometimes, isn't it? Yeah. Barbara Ann, I hope that helps. Now, we have another question coming up. Now, if I can read that, and if I may, John D, could I put this one to you as a lady, Alex? Hi, loving today's event. As a practitioner in training, this is fab. Thank you to everyone. Just a little question. I have trouble tapping on headaches. Oh, John D, you've got the headache question. As headaches seem to be a recurring pain, but not something regular, I'm not sure best how to tackle them. Words of wisdom, please. Sorry.
I think we're going to take a page out of Alina's book, right? And we're going to ask her, what is she doing so far? We're going to take a look at how she's been doing that, if she's working with anybody else. Because the questions, just as we were talking about, the questions you're asking may not be the questions that someone skilled would be asking you about that. So if you've gone through some of your kind, curious, compassionate detective questions about when do you notice that's happening? When do you notice that's not happening? About when did this begin and what else was going on around that time? These are classic Gary Craig questions. But I think we often overlook them when we're doing work on ourselves. And for some reason, I got the idea from Alex that perhaps she's working on herself without, as Alina said, without some support. That outside support could be as easy as just choosing a really good tapping buddy. If you're not getting anywhere with that one, you could even try another. But I'm pretty sure that's one of the things that you're missing, is the getting a little more specific, digging underneath that. And you can also employ the power of metaphor. Right? You can look into anything about chronic pain with the metaphor of that. What does that remind you of? Who might be painful to think about? What might be painful to think about? Are additional questions to the classic toolbox. But again, it's really hard, like we've been talking about, to get out of our way when we have blinders about that. And have we taken on an identity around that? You know, I'm a person who gets headaches when. You might want to use that as your point of departure and investigation. And I completely agree with Alina. You're not going to get anywhere with global or scriptural kind of things around that. You're going to need to get specific and personal, but kindly, so you don't scare yourself or put up a big flow of resistance to those kind of questions.
Yeah. Thank you, Alex. No, thank you, John D. I mean, as I do occasionally get sort of migraine headaches, and I know full well that with me, the two things that occur are that I get stressed about something. Oh, somebody's got some noise going on in the background.
It's gone.
That's brilliant. It's if I have had not enough sleep and I get stressed. Now, I haven't actually, because I don't suffer very often, you know, it's not something I've actually worked on, because at the time I probably don't feel well enough. And I should do it afterwards, really, shouldn't I? It happens very infrequently, but I know it's when I'm stressed and I haven't had enough sleep. So, yes.
Yeah, and I'd like to go ahead. Sorry, Jondi.
I was just going to say that also brings to mind, what's your best guess about what that's all about? Gives them so much permission to just step into the wisdom of their subconscious mind, instead of, what is this about? So, you know, just gentle it up, Alex. If you had to guess, what's that about? What's that saying to you?
Okay.
There is something that both Carl said in his talk and Ann Adams said in her talk, and I think it's extremely important. And that's like when we work on ourselves, like what Alina was saying. You know, the truth is when you can't, and actually Loretta, when you working on yourself, you're looking for, this is such a big problem. There's got to be a big specific issue that I'm looking for. I mean, it's got to be. I've worked on this so long. I've tried it so many different times. It hurts so much. I am looking for the giant thing. And like what Carl Dawson and Ann said, and what we're all saying is, it doesn't have to be the big one. It doesn't necessarily have to be this giant thing that occurred, because to a child, like Dr. Bob Scare said in his book, in his trauma book, is that it's not how big the thing is, it's how helpless someone feels when it occurs and one's prior history to trauma. And that something as small as somebody looking at you funny in the kitchen, or someone saying this tiny little word like we heard about today, means enough to somebody if they're feeling, like Penny said, the Uden moment, unexpected, isolated, dramatic, and no support, no strategy. So that when you're working on yourself, you're looking for a big one, and we shouldn't be. And I tell my clients that, you know, they come to my classes and they're like, oh my God, these people went through these terrible things. Oh my, I shouldn't say anything. You know, it's not. It could be something tiny. And that's what a practitioner will help you do, because they're not looking for the big ones. Sure, you take care of the big ones, but we are looking for what is the Uden moment, or what is the thing that caused the problem. And that's why we're experiencing it. So what I'd like to say to a lot of people who are working on themselves, doing self-help, because EFT is tremendous for self-help, is when you get to the bottom icky ones, the ones that you can't get rid of by yourself. That's what we're here for. This is what all these people are here doing, is to help you get to the bottom of it, even if it's somebody looking at you, your mom looking at you funny in the kitchen.
I'd like to add one very simple thing, though, I found for, I'm not talking migraines here, I'm talking headaches, and that's caffeine. It was mentioned earlier. We live in a very caffeinated world, and people are drinking colas, they drink coffee, and indeed they drink tea. And there's a lot of caffeine in all of those things. And I found, I'm a 4 cup a day regular black tea drinker, and if I didn't have my tea, my cuppa, the next day, I could have a headache. And it took me a while to figure out that I had had a couple of colas, 3 or 4 cups of tea, and now I hadn't had a cup of tea. And if you have a cup of tea or a cup of coffee or a cola and your headache goes away, that's a big clue. If there's certain aspirins, if you look at their composite, what's inside of them, caffeine is a big one. So you think the aspirin's working, but it's the caffeine in the aspirin. And a lot of foods are caffeinated. So I would, really suggest if you have an irregularity of headaches and you are a significant cola, tea, or coffee drinker, that you explore what's happening there.
Well, that's a very good point, isn't it? That you're saying there that we need to look at patterns, not just, it's the environmental stuff, it's what we're putting into our bodies. We do need to look at that because we cannot separate mind, body, and spirit, as we say, time and time and time again. John D, I think I spoke over you. Please forgive me.
It's okay. I was saying the same thing that you were basically, is looking at the patterns. When doesn't it happen?
Can I also add that all of us know that the way that we train people is to always start with the question, have you seen a doctor? I just want to say that is very important. I was working with someone with weight loss issues, and no matter what we did, it just was not resolving. And we did a certain amount of sessions where there wasn't any blocks, there wasn't a PR, so there wasn't a secondary gain for it. It just wasn't budging. Even if it had gone up, we would have said, okay, so what's going on? And what I got this real strong hit that even though I had asked her in my intake forms and just talking with her over many sessions, had she seen a doctor, she had, and they had ruled out everything. And I remember I saying very clearly, you really do have to go see a doctor now because nothing that we're doing is really helping, and I just suspect that it might be more. And sure enough, she had a pituitary tumor. So I just need to say that it's really important to work collaboratively, like Loretta said in the beginning.
Well, that has been mentioned a couple of times during the day, but yes, thank you, Alina, for stressing it, because sometimes we just take things for granted and we can actually forget to say them. But yes, we do in the trainings. You will always say, we're not doctors, we're not diagnosing. We are, helping, we're supporting. Yeah, so do go to your doctor. So thank you very much, Alina, for that. Anybody else on the panel want to jump in on that one? There's silence, so I'm going to take that as a no, and I'm going to go to the next question. I think after this, actually, I think this is so big, I think this is going to take us to the end of the panel session, because I think this is somebody that you were speaking with on Facebook, Alina, on one of the questions there. Thank you all for sharing your time and expertise with us. I was wondering if the panel could elaborate on Alina's discussion of finding difficult to recall events. I'm especially curious about any experience you've had in treating issues of past life origin or relating to generational patterns, if applicable. Thank you. So, Alina, shall I throw that one at you first, and then I think a free-for-all, because you've all got so much knowledge to impart on this subject. So, Alina, would you start us off, please?
I would say I love what Karin added in the Facebook discussion. I'll let her say what she wrote there. Generational patterns is something that I find absolutely fascinating. It came up in Carl's talk today, and it is. I'm not an investigative reporter, but I do like to write. And a couple of years ago, there was this event that happened with this young woman, Hannah Anderson, who was 16 years old, who was kidnapped from San Diego. Her James DiMaggio Jr. killed her mother and her brother by torch. He killed them and he put them in his motorhome and he torched it. Then he took her and they went to, I think it was Montana. Anyway, I heard little bits and pieces from the media about this story that were so out of this world, mind-blowing, but talked about reenactment so clearly, and recapitulation and echoes and this kind of pattern that we live by, that I spent days researching this, and with Craig's help, these are the things that we pieced together. So James Jr., the guy who did the kidnapping, his father had shown affections for a 16-year-old girl in Junior's class when he was in high school. He left, the senior left the family, Junior and his mother, on August the 3rd. And August the 3rd was exactly the date that Jim Jr. took the 16-year-old girl, and killed her mother and brother. And then, crazy, and August 10th was the day, the 10th was the day that the father had committed suicide, and August 10th, was the same exact date decades later where Jim Jr. had the shootout with the FBI and was killed. So you can't make this stuff up. I mean, it is crazy how so many things are generational in nature, and it all happens subconsciously, and work like this and matrix reimprinting really do serve as such a wonderful way of bringing these things to light to be healed. And so I'll leave it at that, because there's just so much to talk about. So I'd love to hear from the other panelists.
I'd like to throw in some words about two things, just very quickly. One being the fact that DNA is affected from past, grandparents we find who suffered certain problems. The grandchildren are reacting to those problems, and there's a lot of studies that demonstrate that. The second thing I want to talk about is doing past lives work. There's a lot of good literature out there, and for someone who's never read something that they felt was from a substantive person, I recommend Brian Weiss's book. He's an MD psychiatrist who wrote a book called Many Masters, Many Lives, or Many Lives, Many Masters, one of those combinations, and talking about his experience working with a woman who was extremely phobic, who had tried everything, and he decided that he was going to regress her to her childhood because she had no memory. And what happened during this period of time is that he started regressing her, and she went flying into past lives, where he found the sources for all of her phobias in those past lives. And when she woke up, just the explanation of it to him while hypnotized seemed to take care of it. The bulk of his work, though, adds another element that I'm not quite sure we want to go into, because in between the lives, he was spoken to by or energies that he referred to as the masters, who knew things about him and his life and life in general that he found profoundly affected his being. I recommend the book to anyone. I have had the experience of working with people who had profound experiences in past lives, and I have found it to be a vital and an important part of our work, to the degree that you are aware and trained and experienced with it.
And I'd like to say one thing about that, about past lives, that's very important, because I have an inordinate, surprisingly, amount of religious clients where past lives is not acceptable and not something that they would go running, screaming out of the room. And so what I'd just like to remind people is, whoever's sitting in front of you is important, and we have to exist and work in the belief system of our client. Absolutely. So it doesn't matter what I believe. It matters what you believe. And if you think it's raining, then I have to, okay, it's raining. Let's see why you believe that, right? And so let's go through that way. I just want to give this something that I have found many, many years ago, is that if there are no past lives, let's just say there's no past lives, because many of us in this group, I mean, just not the panel, I mean, in this healing world, will say, well, of course there's past life. Well, that you're leaving out a whole population that you can assist with. And what I say is, so it's a metaphor. If you have to be Joan of Arc to heal something, I mean, then that's what the subconscious can handle. That's what the unconscious can handle. So you just pretend. And that's something that Elena was talking to me about, is pretending. Is if you don't have memories, and I'm sort of a specialist in people who don't have memories and can't really get things. And it's like, but it's not, I don't know if it really happened or not. You don't have to. That's the wonderful thing about the unconscious or subconscious, is that you can go back and sort of make it up as long as it's reasonable and feasible to you, and your unconscious or subconscious will take care of it. So if you need to be Joan of Arc or the Queen of England, or a caveman to be able to solve something, let's go for it. I don't care who you are. If that's what's going to help you heal, if that's going to tune you into your problem and that we can tap it away, then that's what we need to do. So I just wanted to say something about past lives, because we don't want to get rid of the population this is the only life we have, and that's valid.
I agree with that. I think that that's part of meeting people where they are,
Exactly.
so that you can build this rapport with them, so that they're going to be safe in that healing space, whatever that's going to take. And I also think there's a lot of very frustrated people out there who go, well, the belief system is I have to know what it was or I can't heal from it. So that is, I think, a valid place to work from, as well as the thought that if they are even open, but not necessarily wanting to go down that rabbit trail, there's there's healing value in the question, what if it's not mine? What if this does not belong to me? And I've seen people just collapse in relief. Oh my gosh, what if I don't have to know exactly what it is to be able to heal, and whatever that means to you? And also, what if it's not mine? Right? Sometimes that alone causes a great aha, and they are then able to move that block out of the way, and other things will then come up more along the lines of, what might be possible now that I don't have to have this sort of rigid belief about it.
And Elena's going to have a summit at the end of the summer that's going to talk about all this kind of stuff.
I'd like to just throw a little piece in here that I have found sometimes, but people who tell me they don't remember anything before the age of 16. That's not an uncommon experience I have with folks. I find that if I can talk to them about their childhood homes, where they grew up, get them into their bedroom, what was that like? All of a sudden, as I start asking them very simple questions about what was the color, what was, I've discovered memories, important memories. Like one young woman who got into her bedroom and she remembered the window, and she remembered standing at that window waiting for her father to come for her, and he never came. Or in the kitchen, things that would happen. So sometimes as we move them through common experiences, they can remember, start putting pieces together. I totally agree with you, John D, as well. It's not needed. It's not needed necessarily, but when they obsess on it, I will take them on a trip of their family home.
And the saying goes, the memories are there, they just don't have access to them currently, because they're keeping themselves safe.
And I will say that what John D said about meeting your client where they're at is also this idea that when the client psyche is ready to reveal those memories, it will. When it feels safe with you as a practitioner, and you've built enough rapport, we've all had that experience where, like 10 minutes left in the session, and suddenly that's it when it comes, So it is a matter of meeting your client where they're at too.
I was thinking about Anne's questions earlier, and there's one question that I will ask pretty regularly, and that is, when we've been tapping on a sequence of something, focused on it, I'll ask, did anything else come to mind? And sometimes the anything that else comes to mind was the bingo. It's the next layer. So I invariably ask that question.
And I like at the end of Anne's, she said she always asks her clients 2 questions at the end, and you know, I think newbies, new practitioners, not just newbies, but new practitioners don't ask questions at the end like, what are you taking away with this? Was there something that you expected that didn't happen? And you know, that's from Anne's talk, and it's very true, because we're so involved in, oh, we got to get this done, and we're kind of afraid, like, oh, what's going to happen, and it's, you know, hopefully they walk out with a 1-minute wonder, which is a whole nother story. But the key is don't be afraid to ask, because it gives such wonderful information, feedback back to you.
Yeah, I just was curious. We have a few minutes. If there aren't any questions coming in, I know that there are two small comments that I want to make about the presentations that I've heard. I made the one comment about Anne, but when listening to Carl, it dawned on me on some new studies I've been reading on stress in women, and that women in the main experience stress differently than men. Where men fight, flight, or freeze, the preponderance of women in stress will tend and befriend. Mm-hmm. And they believe that's because of our need to take care of the family, the children, what have you. It's not 100%, mind you. We're talking about in general. And it is thought for years that it was the cortisol and the epinephrine hitting female hormones that created such difficulty we couldn't be studied. And now what they're finding out, what really makes the difference, is that when men get stressed, the natural oxytocin in their body goes down, and when women get stressed, it goes up. Hence, we have this tend and befriend, and the literature is out there now. It's been a good 15 or 20 years, and we have a growing body of research, which takes me to an area where I'm profoundly interested, and that's what's commonly called here in the States codependency. And so when you find people who are horrendously codependent, what you're usually seeing is profound stress behavior. Because for all the reasons, I mean, it's an anxiety-based behavior, but there is usually a core going way back in terms of the pre-6-year-old trauma, which leads me to this one other thing, because I want to make sure everybody who's listening has access to it. There was a study done called the Adverse Childhood Experience Study, where there were 24,000 people asked who went into Kaiser Permanente in Southern California, which is a medical group, to participate. 17,000 agreed, so we have a huge number of people. They were given specific tests, men were one set, women another, and they came up with 8 categories of childhood abuse: physical, mental, and spiritual, household dysfunctions, someone was in prison, drug users, alcoholics, chronically depressed, mentally ill, or suicidal are the profound ones. You score 0 to 8, and they could predict health problems based on that, and they opened up their charts, and there they were. And these were cross-cuts of American middle-class folk. And there's one other one which I think is important for folks if they're interested, because there's sometimes old knowledge gets ignored, but there is an old-fashioned test that's been around for years called the Holmes Ray, where it can predict within a 2-year period whether someone's going to get ill or injured based on the amount of stress that they're carrying in that moment. And I'd recommend that people take the time to look at that, because I think thread through most of our work and things that we've listened to is that we aren't bits and pieces. We're a continuum. We're a complex continuum of things. And stress right now seems to be the light that we can use to shine to find these things. Okay, I'll be quiet now.
Thank you.
Never be quiet, Loretta, please.
Can I tell my husband to say that?
Yeah.
Okay, so who's going to jump in next? Because this is such a big subject. You know, it's what do we do when we can't remember? Okay, I'll talk just for a couple of minutes, because this is what has led me to do what I do, and why I've wanted to put this event on today, because I did not remember my childhood. And it took me a couple of years to get to it. I'm very kinesthetic anyway, so I don't see things. And, you know, we watch other people. We watch the masters, the experts, talking to their clients, and within 3 minutes, they've got the memory to work on. But then you go out and you get the client that comes in and they say, okay, when do you first remember, you know, experiencing this? And you start going through all questions, and they don't know. You know, and I was one of those. I was one of those. So I will just mention, because I love it, and I get upset. Not personally, but I do get upset when I hear people say, I tried EFT and it didn't work for me. The reason is because you weren't tapping on the specific events. I do picture tapping. I have come up with my own little tool to help people just to cut through some of the difficulties of getting to that point. Mind map tapping, which Cara knows about, because we were playing together in Nashville last year. But you need to get to the specifics. And that's what today is all about. So who's jumping in next?
I will say that and I've told Gary this, if I had wanted relief from my autoimmune condition and I had jumped on the internet today and I had searched EFT for autoimmune conditions, I would have been one of the sea of discontented EFT people saying that it didn't work for me. And instead, I was lucky enough to, way back in the day, Gary had the manual online, and what he said very clearly was about the importance of specific events. Somehow I got that, I grokked it, and I realized that 6 months before I had my autoimmune condition, I'd had a stillborn. And I made that connection, that was the event. And I went through a series of asking myself all the different aspects that were there, trying to uncover them all. It took me 3 weeks to uncover all the aspects and the secondary gains that were there. So, but I rarely hear that out there, and I think that is what's happening more and more. So it does feel sometimes like there's this tsunami of all of this other information out there. But programs like yours, Fiona, really do help to really dispel some of the myths out there.
Well, some of them are just tools to help. You know, it's how do you get to the point that you need to more quickly? You know, what's the quickest, gentlest route to get to what you need to work on? And that's always what I work with, because the whole point of doing this work is we want the client to feel better. You know, sort of occasionally there's a little bit of discomfort when we bring something up and we work on it, but we know we're going to clear it, so that's okay. But how do you get to what you need to work on most quickly and most effectively to clear everything out? Because that's such a good point, Alina. It took you 3 weeks. The stillborn is a very traumatic experience, isn't it?
You know, the questions that we've had here have been very not just practitioner oriented, but self-help oriented. And the one thing that I find out when we're working on ourselves, because we all need self-help, right, is we live in what I call the mountain. So the mountain is I almost drowned. The mountain is I had a stillborn. The mountain is, you know, I can't find the right relationship. And so people don't know how to break that down into specifics. And that's what needs to be taught, because, yeah, you do. Like Gary said, and we all say, what you see on the internet is the 1-minute wonders. I mean, I have my, you know, 5-minute wonders, 1-minute wonders on the internet too, but I also have my hour-long ones. And, you know, I fight for that, because people have to see that it's not always just 2 minutes, or it's just one session, it's a series of sessions. But people live in their mountains, and to learn how to break down those mountains and get to that specific event, like the tell the story technique does and the movie technique does, where you go in a little bit at a time and a little bit at a time, because when you get to that mountain, you got to break that down into 400 aspects. Because if you're afraid of a snake, you know, I know this is basic at EFT, but I think people are forgetting that. You know, if you're afraid of a snake, are you afraid of his tongue? Are you afraid of the sound? Are you afraid of the touch him? Is he going to chase after you? Is he going to strangle you? Is he, you know, all these 400 things, and you have to break each of those down. But people live in then I'm afraid of snakes. And I think it's important that there's more information out there, that if EFT doesn't work, it's because you're not specific. And how do you get specific, like what you said, Fiona, is to keep breaking it down and keep breaking it down. And it feels so tiring. It's like I'm just afraid of snakes. But you have been afraid of snakes for 40 years. Take the 40 minutes, break it down, and tab on each of the aspects. It's only 40 minutes. And, you know, and that's what I try to teach too, is because then EFT can't not work. because you're breaking it down and being specific, and like everybody's been saying, and this is what we all, especially on this panel, try to teach. And what Gary Craig is saying, he just gets like, you guys don't understand, scripts don't work, and it's because it's not specific, you know, and it must get tiring for him because he says it over and over again. But people need the scripts because they don't know how to be specific, and the only way you need to be specific is to go, what am I afraid of snakes about? I don't like the tongue. You might be okay with the tongue coming out, but I'm not okay with the tongue. And I think for especially self-help is to break down the mountain, break down the mountain, break down the mountain.
Yeah, beautifully put, beautifully put. And also what you said, I mean, you were talking, it's human nature that we share our 1-minute wonders. You know, even if they did take 15 or 20 minutes. I mean, we all do that. We don't say, I went to a really mediocre restaurant last night, but we'll say, I went to a brilliant restaurant last night, you must go. So Anne Adams was saying, what are your clients' expectations? Because one thing that we do often find is that, yeah, I mean, I had this, somebody recommended somebody, in fact, you know about this one, Karen, because I spoke to you about it, because I consult people. This young woman has been in therapy for, I don't know, about 15 years. And a relative of hers, you know, said she's got to come to see me, she's got to come to see me, and kind of expected that I'd be able to do it in 2 or 3 sessions. You know?
Oh, your magic wand, yes. You have a magic wand, Fiona.
Yes. You know, and this is someone who I actually had to teach how to calm herself down before we could really do anything. Because she'd never learned, which was interesting. But she's doing very well. She's finding life easier. But I think this relative she's coming around to the fact that, you know, it's not something that we can just go, ooh, you know, they've seen therapists for years and years and years. But when they come to you as a last resort, you need to be able to do it in 1 session. And maybe, you know, some of the people who are coming into EFT are expecting that. What would you say to them? Who wants to come in on that one?
I would like Loretta to talk about this because she's been in psychotherapy for 100 years. And I think it's important, maybe not 100, and I think it's important that, I mean, if anybody can talk about this in traditional therapy and how long things take in 1-minute wonders, is someone who's seen it, almost all of it. So Loretta, could you answer that?
Well, you know, first of all, traditional therapy comes in different sizes and shapes. I mean, there are people who come in simply for some life counseling. After all, the village is no longer in place. Yeah. And so they come in to have a separate perspective where they know that they can be understood. So that's one thing, and that doesn't last very long. Other people come in for a variety of issues that may take longer. Very few people come in for depth psychology, and that is another issue altogether. When it comes to EFT, though, one of my favorite questions is people say, well, how long is it going to take? I have this problem, I want to use EFT on it, and how long is it going to take? And, you know, I have to tell them that I have not the vaguest idea how long it's going to take. Some things look very simple on the surface, but there are times that we find they're inordinately complex. But I should have a good idea by around the 3rd or 4th time they're here, and I hopefully would have a good idea that I could give them some, and I explain to them about complexity, childhood issues that get built upon, and so forth. But it is a very common question. How long is it going to take for the EFT? You know, I don't want to talk to my mother. How long is it going to take to fix that? So, and with regard, Karen, to the traditional therapy, I think it's the same. It's the same for a lot of us. A lot of people who just do life coaching or EFT coaching. Some people just come in with problems that they just need to have a perspective outside of themselves.
Yes, yes, Loretta, that was lovely. Ladies, you know, we haven't actually got that much time left, but do we care? Because if nobody's, you know, got to rush off, I mean, should we carry on for a bit? Because this is so wonderful. And Karen, when I said that there were hundreds of years of experience amongst the panel, you told me off.
No, that wasn't me.
Oh, wasn't it? Okay, but it's true. We have so much experience here that I really you know, and we've got the archives. People are going to be able to access this afterwards. So there are such good points coming up. I mean, if we may, can we carry on? Is that all right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay.
I don't have a problem with
Got a
it.
few.
Good. Good. Okay, who's next to add their pearls of wisdom? Because this is so helpful for people. It really is. Oh, I'm going to have to put the camera on somebody then, aren't I? Well, okay, Alina, I've just put it on you, just because you've got such a beautiful tan and it was your birthday recently as well.
Yes. Yeah. So what I wanted to say, some highlights of today. One of my favorite explanations of how this works was Fred Gallo talking about memory reconsolidation, which is something that we're talking more and more about in our EFT trainings. And it's a brilliant explanation for what happens when we bring something up to the surface, dragging all the baggage that we've accumulated from the time that it happened until this point in time, and be able to feel differently about it, and then have that go back into the vault in a completely different way. And I just love that explanation. The other explanation that I really loved was Carl talking about the feelings aren't in the body. The feelings are in the field, and how that's why we talk about an event and suddenly we're feeling something in our stomach, but the rest of the day we had been carrying on without that sensation in the stomach. I just found those explanations for those things are just lovely. So if anyone wants to jump in with some of the highlights for today, that would be good too.
I'll just come in briefly. John D, you've been far too quiet, so I'm going to come to you in a minute, and I'm just giving you a heads up. But I mean, Alina, I know that Craig does a lot on, you know, sort of how it all works, and we say up here, don't we? But this memory categorization, reconsolidation, yes, is fascinating stuff, and how we do short-term memory and the working memory, and then it goes into long-term memory, but how every time we take it out, whether we do something with it or not, we alter it slightly. I remember having a very interesting conversation with a sheriff who quite threw me, because me being British, we don't do guns in this country, and she suddenly lifted her shirt to show me that she was, you know, carrying a pistol. Ooh! Tap, tap, tap. Because it's shocking to me, but she was saying about the problems that they have with witnesses because of the time period between when it happens and when they actually get to present their witness statement in the court. And we were just having a really interesting discussion about that. But as we know, there is a danger in talk therapy that if we just discuss, all we're doing is reinforcing the loop, whereas we need to go in and remove the emotional charge. And just before we move to you, John dear, another fascinating study. There was a university professor at one of the universities in the States, I'm sure it was, who got all his students to write a statement of where they were and what they were doing when Kennedy was shot. And then 30 years later, he got them out and he contacted the students. And he said, would you write down what you were doing and where you were when Kennedy was shot? And not one of them was the same. Not one.
Mm-hmm.
Fascinating stuff, isn't it? So when people say, you know, with the movie technique and then, you know, with matrix reimprinting, well, how can you change? We still know what happened, but it kind of looks a bit different. But what we're concerned with is that it feels different.
I think one has to, you know, be appreciative of the symbology and what the unconscious mind gives you to work with consciously, and to insist that everyone agree on that, I think, is a fool's journey. We're given what we're given by our unconscious mind to deal with, and it's all that's really necessary. I feel so strongly that we know so little about what's going on energetically. There's so much that was said between Gary and Carl that I resonated so deeply with, because there is this whole world of thought that's saying we really do live in a giant holograph, and we have a conscious and an unconscious agreement of what we see, which goes back to the morphic fields. Because I know, Alina, you know Sheldrake. You've had opportunity to talk to him, and his whole his whole theory on morphogenic fields, where we have a special field, we have a familial field, we have a personal field, in which all our memories are stored. And we might say that some of the trauma is frozen in those. I'm really not quite sure what the right metaphor is to use. But Sheldrake has done some incredible and brilliant work on placing things in fields that people know things the next day that they would not have known before. Like crossword puzzles are easier to do on Monday morning than on Sunday because more people have done them. And so that information is in the sky. I mean, his graduate students have done everything you could possibly come up with to test these morphogenic fields. And so our work, I mean, we're just scratching at the door of some of these things. And what blows me away, that even with our scratches, there is still profound, profound work we're able to do. And so I am so excited about the world in which we work and function and what we can bring to the table. I'm just stunned. But I do this with the understanding that everyone brings something, you know, and nothing is really, what can I say? Nothing is really lost on the person if it's brought with a heart that's open.
No, I agree, because I mean, you know, as you've all been saying, you know, when we're saying, well, make it up, you know, tell me a story, you know, it doesn't matter, does it? It really doesn't matter. I mean, what is reality? And by the way, Rupert Sheldrake is somebody else who makes me giggle and drivel, because I just think he's so wonderful. Just like, oh, I'm a bit silly. Wonderful, wonderful man. He was at Carl's first matrix reimprinting convention a couple of years ago, and as he was speaking, we were in Brighton, the Starlings. I think it's a murmuration of Starlings, isn't it? Which is a beautiful word. Yeah, and they did their thing across the beach, and we just went, oh, marvellous, wonderful, wonderful. John D, my darling, I think you've got yourself a group of talkers here.
I think that's okay. I want to riff off something that Loretta said. This is really exciting stuff, and I think that we can hand our clients and our students the excitement about this. And again, meeting who they are, it doesn't have to go too terribly deep for that person who just wants to know what's in that for me. What should I take away from that? So one of the things that I think we're talking about is that the plasticity or the flexibility, the changeable nature, trying to get back into my 8-year-old words, the changeable nature of memory can be a comfort, a great comfort to them. Mm-hmm. This can be changed. This can be seen in another way. Mm-hmm. And so that's reflected in some of the knowledge that we'll pass on to them, but also in some of the questions we say, such as, when you think about that, what part of that is most troubling to you? Is a way to get into what matters to them, right? We can also introduce them to the idea that this is just sort of stuck in procedural memory. It hasn't fully discharged. When they can see this in terms that they can understand that how that might impact them for better, they can go, oh, it's in the middle. It hasn't finished yet. Mm-hmm. I'm not stuck forever. I'm not screwed forever. I'm not broken. This is in the middle, and it needs to be discharged and completed. Would you like to be complete? Mm-hmm. Would you like to feel that way? And to me, this is the import of that. What is present to you now? These are the things that are important to them. And then as we take this excitement and lend it to them about what else might be possible once you know that.
Yeah.
Just again, it's that lovely, that we can give them. And to me, that's very, very satisfying that you can start them on a trail to things that you might be thrilled to bits about, but you know, they may not want to talk to me about Dr. Tiller's amazing things that he shares with Rupert Sheldrake right now. It might be so. And so I think, you know, we need to make that real for them.
Well, that's giving them the gift of hope, isn't it? It's telling them, that they're in the middle of something that, that can be changed. And yeah, you're showing them the light at the end of the tunnel. Ladies, we have run over, but as I say, we're not worrying too much about it, aren't we? But obviously people do have, things to do and whatever. So I probably should say, why don't we go for another 10 minutes and then wrap it up? Yeah? So I'm 44 minutes past the hour. Let's not go into which hour it is for all of you lot, because we've had some very funny confusions about time over the last few days. So let's go for 10 minutes. So that's a few minutes each. If I could come to each of you in turn and say, perhaps, if there's something you want to say to wrap up, or just something that you've taken from the day's presentations, or just something you want to share with the audience. So, shall I start with you, Loretta?
Indeed, I was just thinking maybe this is a good time to introduce us.
At the end, doing it backwards.
Doing it backwards. That is yeah. I feel that I was at the very first conference that has now grown into ACEP in, I think it was 1998 in Flagstaff, Arizona. And then a couple in Las Vegas before ACEP was formed. And to watch something grow because it has the truth in it. It brings the truth to the table. Is exciting. As I said, there's so many paths up this mountain. And I feel that the next step that needs to be taken is to move it into traditional treatment. We have more and more doctors at where I used to work at Kaiser who are doing this work. More and more therapists are doing it. And then the blessed practitioners who are out there as well, training and also working. And when we have this army of people, I kind of like to think of us as sort of the Johnny Appleseed of mental health. Where everyone has this in their medicine cabinet. One of the reasons that I was attracted to EFT was that it was so available for everyone, and we could teach people to calm and self-soothe themselves, where with the soft field therapy, which I trained in, and I was a trainer for Roger at one point, that was not something I could teach people to do for themselves. And so this was, to me, the right step to go. And it's a privilege to do this work. It's a privilege to be in your company. And it was wonderful to hear the people that you had on the program today.
Every single one of the people involved in this today have been phenomenal. It's been great. Anyway, Karin, my darling, you're next on the row along, so introduce yourself so we can finish. I'm kidding.
Well, I'm not even going to bother introducing myself. I'm too much all over the place. I'm going to go with what Loretta's went with. Yes, well, and I think that the key, there's two big things, is that, well, actually three, that, this is, EFT is great for self-help. You can't just go out there and hang a shingle without learning more, and knowing what to do. And although EFT works on everything, we need questions to get to the bottom of it, or it looks like EFT doesn't work. So that's something that we've really put forth today. But I also think what Loretta is saying is, there's a whole started in 2012, now 2015. People are okay now with being woo-woo. It's not woo. You tap on a meridian, like you were saying, Alina's husband Craig, and what David Feinstein is doing. You tap on the meridians, and things change. So we're now learning that this can be mainstream. And then here comes Gary Craig talking about Course in Miracles and not needing to tap. And I know Alina's been doing this kind of work too. I have clients who allow me to do this kind of stuff where they say it's like watching paint dry, because I just sit there and do stuff and I'm not saying anything. And profound change, it's funny, and profound changes occur because I'm connected to the inner source, or like the Ewan method and all these methods that have been using this kind of thing that we haven't told anybody yet, because it's hard enough that banging on your face changes things. So I think it's really wonderful that we're moving into like the morphic field is changing, so that we're getting through that alternative and complementary healthcare can be alternative and complementary healthcare, and it can be along with medicine, and here we go, it's finally getting open. And then the ones that have been here for a long time are going like, it gets even better. You don't even have to tap on somebody. And everybody goes, no, 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 it's too much information. But it's happening. And like Loretta's saying, it's exciting for those of us who've been dabbling in this and just may not have been telling people that we're dabbling in it, because it's all has to do with source and God and universe and being one and things like that. So all this stuff is happening so fast now, and I'm so excited to be a part of it. And I think we as practitioners should be excited to be a part of it, meeting with our clients what they can handle, and then those that are like, just, I don't care if you sit there and it looks like I'm watching paint dry. Can you help? And we connect with their higher selves and all this wonderful stuff. So wherever you can be in that, I'll tap on myself to feel better, up into I'll just close my eyes and vibrate. So wherever you are in the middle of that is a wonderful thing, and I think that's a great time to be here.
Wonderful. Cara, thank you. John D.
Oh, whoops.
John
You're
D.
muted.
You've muted.
Sorry,
Oh.
I muted myself. Sorry, there was too much noise here in the office.
You're the culprit.
But I do think it's a very exciting time to be here. I've tried for, I think, a very long time to get it into the mainstream and whatever, and I finally gave up trying that so it could actually go. And I just said, that's exciting. Just be that excitement, embody that, hold that out, and put that in your field, and it will all be okay. And I think it is happening, as we are all saying. And I want to say the important part for me became that I was instructed somehow to form community. And I know Alina does this on the Northwest, and I'm doing it lately on the Northeast, and Gwyneth's doing it in North England. And I do believe that this is what we're supposed to do to encourage its growth, to amplify the effect of it out into all the places it needs to go. So I'm very grateful to be part of a community of people who are like-minded and also want to participate in this. So I believe that the first thing we do is we show up, and the second thing we do is we look for community, and from there we are transformed. And so thank you.
Thank you, John D. That was beautiful. Okay, Alina, last but not least.
Wow, I don't think I can add anything else to that, John D. I would just say that adding to try to find the thread here with all of this, and something that you said earlier in one of the interviews, Fiona, about the Maharishi effect. You were talking about that experiment that happened in not just one city. I think the first study happened in Jerusalem, but they've done it throughout in various places.
Yeah.
I think that I don't know anyone that does this work that is consistent and good and moving forward and progressing and who isn't doing the work themselves. So if we do believe that this is a holographic universe, if we do believe in the field, if we do believe that we are all one, then it's really imperative for all of us, and especially practitioners, to continue to do the work, because what shows up, and I'm sure everyone would agree, what shows up in your office has many facets of your own healing. So yeah, I just want to encourage everyone to continue to do that, because you do reach this blissful place where life is exciting, thrilling, and just a joy to be here on the planet.
Alina, that was wonderful. I mean, what you were saying about, the clients that show up for us, for some strange reason, all my clients were people who didn't have any memories. How strange is that? But, I mean, it is wonderful, because, that was what took me into, sort of everything else that I've done. You know, I've learned about meta health. I've done the matrix re-imprinting. I've done the picture tapping, and Penny made me laugh when she said something along the lines of, "Oh, I'm never going to be doing this." And I can distinctly remember saying I would never work with children. Oh, well, that didn't last, did it? Picture tapping is ideal for the little ones. I've got a couple of the little bears behind me, one of which I had from you, Karin, because I kept on buying them from you and giving them away to small children who needed them more than I did. But that was what also drove me to come up with my mind map tapping, which, you know, again, it gives us what we need to work on. And that's my cat just saying, have we been going on too long? Hush, darling, we'll be finished in a minute. But it is so important, isn't it, to get specific and work on what needs to be worked on. I am going to need to wrap this up. So let me just thank everybody that we've had on today. Oh, by the way, you know, we were saying that we've all got April birthdays. Well, not all of us, but
July.
Yeah, you're a summer baby as well, aren't you, Karin? How about you, Loretta? When's your birthday?
I'm a June.
Yeah,
I'm a Leo. I'm a late July.
Oh, you're a late July. But Gaurav is our technical director in India, and because they are 5.5 hours ahead of UK time, it's now tomorrow there, and it's his birthday.
Oh,
Happy
birthday
birthday to Gaurav, and thank you to him very much for his help today. Thank you for Dr. Thornton Streeter, who was the one who started Energy Medicine Exchange, because you can see this is MX20. Every single one of these events is free. Everybody has given their time freely, and I've learned a lot about how to put these things on. I'm still learning because I didn't get it all right, but my golly, the information that's come across today from people who have given their time freely, got up very early in the morning in some cases to do it, but it's been phenomenal, and I couldn't have asked for a better panel to round off the day. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you, Fee.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Fiona.
And we're having so much fun, but I think we have to go. So people, you know, this is freely given. Accept the information, take it, and use it. Because EFT can change the world.
Well done, Fiona. Bravo.
Oh, thank you, Loretta. Thank you. And thank you to you and all the listeners. Oh, group hug! Group hug! Okay, well, we could be here all night, but obviously we can't. So I'm just going to say thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Alina. Thank you, Jondi. Thank you, Karin. Thank you, Loretta. It has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and expertise and your precious time.
Thank you, ladies. Bye-bye.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you. Bye-bye.